Good morning, everybody. Hopefully everyone can hear me. If not, you'll have to ask or send a message. The usual rules apply. We are recording this, as you will see. There is the chat on the side, so please ask questions as we go. We'll try and pick those up as we go along. But first of all, Jeff, great that so many people have signed in and want to see what UK Bim Alliance Kent are doing, and see so many of you. Maybe that's a sign of the times. Maybe it's because we've got something that's of interest to people. So hopefully a bit of both. I'm reading on the news or listening to the news this morning, the fact that Christmas is going to come back again, maybe that's a sign of better things to come. I'm not 100% sure, but let's hope so. The whole principle of this particular session, we've been working as a leadership group to try and invigorate people's thought process around why do BIM. And the whole theme for the year was to demonstrate that what BIM does and create evidence so that people that are doing it can verify, if they like, to themselves that they're doing the right thing. But secondly, for others to learn from what others have been doing and use that within their businesses to encourage change and a positive thought process in embedding and using BIM and other digital solutions to become more efficient and to deliver something different. So what we've done here is the first time we've tried to do this on case studies. We had a template for those that joined us previously. We've developed a template for people to use. The three of the leadership group are going to present their case studies today. The plan is that those case studies then will be available to people through the website to use as a resource. And then we'll talk a bit later on as to how we might build that for the benefit of others and others included in those case studies. So on that note, we'll move on to the agenda for today. We've got three case studies, 3D modelling, which Mel from Burns Guthrie is going to present, collaboration, which is Matthew from Bimx will be doing, and 3D modelling that Matt Samways of AMIS will be presenting. We'll then have an opportunity, we're on for an hour and a half, but we should have time for us to have an open discussion at the end. We've suggested that if you've got specific questions around the case studies, fire them in as at the time, rather than you can wait until the end and we can answer them then. Either way, whatever works. But if you've got any questions on particular ones, please fire them in. So on that note, we've nothing more to say. We haven't got any fire drills to worry about. So we'll get straight into it. So over to you, Mel, on case study one.
It's disappeared. My case study has disappeared for some reason.
Is that who's driving it?
It's my end, I think.
So do you want to just try again clicking on the handouts button? See if you try again.
There it is. Okay. I'll just drag that to one side. Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity to do this. I suppose this is really our story at Burns Guthrie and Partners Chartered Architects. Every architect will tell you a different story, how they've gone through this process or not. In our instance, we realized some time ago that where the future was going to be. We are a small practice. We're one of the 80%, which is less than 5 members of staff. Basically, the aims, what I've tried to do with this case study is illustrate the introduction of BIM software within our practice, provide some advice and encouragement, outline some of the advantages that we have found, and we have found a lot, and illustrate the benefits of digital collaboration within the procurement process. As I said, Burns Guthrie is one of 80% of practices that are less than 5. So there's a huge number of architects' practices out there that maybe struggle with the concept of changing to a BIM sort of environment. And many say, well, we don't have to. It's not a client requirement. With us, it was not a case of waiting for there to be a requirement to do BIM. It was more about what we can do with BIM to make us better and more efficient, more effective, and to add value. So whilst we're a small practice, we tend to punch above our weight, and that's due to our experience, our expertise, and our efficiencies. And this particular project at Angmering, down on the south coast, this was for a fairly substantial extension to a school. Its value was about 5 million. But what I will do is I will go through the case study as you see it. This was only our second project that we used BIM software on. And I think that gives you an indication of where there's a will, there's a way. And you can very quickly take these things on board and integrate them. It was a D&B 2-stage tender. We had 6 weeks from the initial client meeting to getting in a planning application. And then we had a further 6 weeks for RIBA stage 4. So the timescales were exceptionally tight. It was a 3-story building, so you had 3 sets of plans, elevations, incredible number of sections and details. And in the end, there were there were 100 PDF files virtually outputted. So, as I mentioned there, output was via PDF, but of course you're working with a single model, and that model can be used in different ways. And this illustrates the use of the model to do presentation material. So this was an image that was generated and used to give planners an indication of what the building would look like. I can't say that it's a particular architectural masterpiece, but it gives you an indication of what you can do with the software. And it's all in one model. BIM design was not a stated client requirement, but it was our choice. And that's going forward, our choice is to use the BIM software on absolutely every project. We also used a little add-on to the software that we use called Bimx, and Bimx is a way of distributing the model in a very simple to understand way. But the Bimx file which is uploaded to the cloud and then downloaded to anyone's device, whether that's a phone, a PC, or an iPad. The Bimx file contains all the PDF output as well. So the Bimx file for this project included the model, but it also included all the PDF files. So I'll come on to that a little bit later. How do we get there? How can others adopt this practice? Unfortunately, you have to invest. You have to invest in the hardware and the software and training. And you also have to maybe accept that there's going to be a period of learning, you know, that curve, the learning curve of getting into the software and being able to use it. And that is the big risk. That's perceived as a risk. It may be dependent on the staff you have and their willingness to accept change. But we bit the bullet in the end, and we were able to do that because we managed to acquire some grant funding. Basically, the total investment was the equivalent of 25% of our annual turnover. Now, that is a big chunk to take from any one year. So this particular grant scheme allowed us to spread that over 3 years. And they also granted us 40% of the capital cost. So that was, you know, absolutely vital to us as a small practice. I think one of the other lessons as part of this process is not to go down too far initially into doing whizzy things that you don't need to do. We focused on producing what we would normally produce at first, but always explore what you can do for future projects. So the objective was making us more efficient. As part of that, you target using the strengths of the software and the opportunities of the software as well to add service value. So what are the benefits and value? First of all, speed of production. There is literally no way that as a practice we would have been able to have hit the target for planning in 6 weeks or RIBA stage 4 in 6 weeks. Ease of sharing information with site, which again is something I'll come on to a little bit later, but that was using a product called Bimx. Accurate coordination of construction elements. Now, this is one of the revelations of working with BIM software. And it's something I touch on in the answer to the next section. In the use of BIM software, as architects for many years, we developed this skill of being able to look at 2D information and imagine in 3D. So we have a reasonably accurate understanding from 2D information what the 3D will look like. But obviously it takes time to get to that situation. We kind of design with sketches and sort of images in our head, but with BIM software you can actually design in 3D, and you can design accurately in 3D. So basically that's the major change I found in switching to BIM working. And it was quite revelatory because it had a significant impact. It really made me realize that this was the path to go down. When you put a beam into a model, you are thinking in 3D, you are putting a beam in at a level, but you're also choosing, instead of a 450 deep beam, you're actually putting in an actual steel member, and it might be 457 deep. You know, that kind of accuracy can avoid some of the mistakes that come along later. Potentially, the image on the left there is an image from this product called Bimx, and you can see there's a kind of a 3D representation there of a building, but underneath there's also the PDF file of the ceiling layout. So basically, once the Bimx file is loaded onto an iPad, whoever has that on site can go literally anywhere on site. So if I click on this, I can give you a quotation. This is the guy that worked on Angmering project, the site manager, he found it an absolute revelation, and he saw it as the future. But basically, he gave me a quotation, which you're at liberty to read. The digital access to files on site was invaluable, and basically he could take that on. He took his iPad onto site, and he could show anybody on site if they had a query. Well, what happens here? What's the intent? What's the intent of the design? He could actually illustrate that in real time to the person. Excuse me. He could even measure distances on that. So, for instance, if he wanted to have an indication of the door setting out, for instance, he could measure that. But he did also have access to the setting out drawings. What he found was that he could take that information onto site and access that information rather than being on site and realizing he's got to walk back to the site cabins, find the information on paper, get that information, and then take it back onto site. He had that with him all the time, and the final line is, this convenience resulted in significant time savings for me and others on site. And we actually use the Bimx software too to send to clients, because to send a 3D image or a 3D model to our clients, because it's something that they can literally walk around. They can see what our design intent is, and they can even use Google Cardboard to actually physically walk around the building. So finally, some of the sort of big picture things is, with the implementation of BIM software as part of an architect's process, push boundaries. Always push boundaries, experimentation all the way through. For instance, we're currently looking at automatic scheduling of building elements and materials to help project costing, but we're now also looking at embodied carbon analysis. Invest time in developing a template. It will reap dividends. The BIM software templates are an absolute must. There is one that comes out of the package straight out the box, but and it is very comprehensive, but it just needs tailoring to your methodology, your method of working, your office standards. But it will reap benefits. And as part of that process, you can have favorites and libraries of standard elements. Just a word of warning, the process does involve more time in RIBA stage 2 and 3. You know, probably on a standard project, we would have charged 35% of our fee to be for up to RIBA stage 3. I think we would be looking at 40%. The reason is that maybe you have to make a few more decisions, and also there's more time in modeling in 3D than if you're just simply drawing 2D drawings. So you either have to accept that as an investment and you reap the benefit of that in RIBA stage 4 because of the automatic scheduling and the automatic creation of elevation sections, etc. So you either charge more or you invest it and reap the benefit in stage 4. So it's just something to think about there. And I think that's all I would wish to present.
That's fantastic, Mel. And I think doing your own personal journey on this, it's impressive that you're really starting to see some benefits. I've got some questions which I'm going to save to the end because I suspect we're going to have some common ones. I haven't got any specific questions on that case study unless there's anyone or any of the panelists want to say anything now, or we store them up to the open discussion at the end. No, on that, Matthew, you're going to share the screen again and we'll move on to case study 2, which is yours anyway.
It is, yeah, thank you. And good morning, everyone. Just hopefully you can see the case study just appearing on the screen now. I will carry on as if you can. Yes, this, thank you. This case study is basically a project that Bimx Construction procured through the Kent County Council Principal Contractors framework. It was for a part of a larger project which involved a sports block as well, but the case study is really on the new teaching block, which was part of the overall project. It's around about £4.5 million project. We were appointed around about August last year, and the building itself is due to be handed over next week. So it's quite a live and current case study to run through with you today. So we were the main contractor. It was a design and build stage 3 single action tender. The architects, Bob Bryan Architects, that we've done quite a few projects with now. They're quite popular on the Kent County Council framework. Banyard Consultants were the M&E designers, and the structure itself was provided by Innovari Systems, which I'll talk a little bit more about in shortly. The structural engineer was Walden's Engineering, and all those consultants and the team were involved during stage sort of 2 and 3 prior to our appointment on the project. So we're quite happy to adopt the same design team and same MMC supplier through Innovari as we develop the project through to stage 4 and construction and handover next week of this block. The project itself had fairly tight deadlines, which kind of led to the adoption of the MMC offsite solution by Innovari. The Innovari system that we used had external walls, which were SIPS panels, a sort of standard timber frame, internal walls and structural load-bearing walls. There was a precast concrete floor, first floor, and the roof is lightweight timber cassettes. So quite a straightforward design. There are a few kind of design issues, and it wasn't just quite a straightforward box. We had the roof at slightly different heights, and as you can see from the images, and the building itself's got quite a large entrance canopy, which isn't impossible, but it does present a few challenges for some of the MMC providers. But Innovari Systems had quite a detailed solution for that. The whole case study is really about the sort of collaboration that the design team and us as main contractor applied to the project, and the 3D modelling that happened during that, and obviously the implementation on site, which is a great success story. So just really in terms of the kind of what we did was get the team together really early. It was quite a quick program, rapid program. So we realised that to achieve that, we had to get the design team back up and running. There was a period between the team completing stage 3 and us being appointed and starting stage 4. And every week was really critical in terms of the program time, and being able to secure the production slot for Innovari was absolutely essential in terms of getting the building up and on site. We realised that there were a few discrepancies in terms of coordination at the stage 3 design, and we realised that we needed to establish some really robust file sharing protocols. This isn't the first project that we've done in BIM as a main contractor, and certainly not for the design team involved. But we rolled out a BIM execution plan, which is a sort of template that we adjust for each of the projects we deliver. There's a few variables in there. It's a great opportunity for the team to get together and make sure that everyone's on the same page. We realised straight away that we'd encounter some difficulties between inoperability of different file formats. So our engineer and architect were all designing in Autodesk Revit. The architect Bon Brian using ArchiCAD as their form. So what we realised that we'd have to do a lot of file sharing using the IFC file format. Having experienced a few difficulties on previous projects with moving models from one platform to another, what we did was just wanted to we asked the design team to demonstrate to us as main contractor and really practice themselves that. So we asked them to just export and import some simple geometric data-rich files, which did present a few issues. I think the first time we did it, for some reason, the M&E model was 10 meters below ground, so we had to make some adjustments to do that. And having some BIM support from BIM managers in Bon Brian, and we've got our own support in house as well. A lady called Elle Gregory, so she gives us and the team some support in doing that. We were able to solve those problems offline from the main design process. By doing that offline and by engaging those people, it meant that the design teams could still carry on, still design the projects, still produce the amount of information that we needed in the short time scale without having to deal with some of the technicalities. And some of the issues that they had. And then once the technical teams had worked out what the fix was, they were able to apply that to the models. Once we'd ironed out those issues, the process was sort of fairly straightforward in terms of coordination. Absolutely essential with an off-site design where you need to be able to fully realise the design at an earlier stage to perhaps a more traditional route. Once we'd got some of the outputs at stage 4, we checked the quality of those just to make sure that they had the right level of information and data in them for the intended purpose. So what were the benefits? Obviously efficient file sharing once we'd got over the initial issues. We had some really good quality information for modern methods of construction for the off-site solution. There was a lot of toing and froing between Bonbrian and Innovari, making sure that the model was correct, and trying to look at some of the difficulties and differences that happened when Innovari systems took the model away and then actually went through their production software. We had a few minor changes in terms of some of the dimensions of timbers, for example, that had to change, and that went back and forth, so the architects could also adjust their model, just make sure that we were compliant and maintaining the necessary floor areas and some of the dimensional constraints that we needed. As it says there, the MMC, the BIM modelling process really does go hand in hand. So I've just lost the case study there.
We can see it.
Oh, you can still see it. Fantastic. Yeah. So it really goes hand in hand with the method.
Make it a bit bigger.
Sorry, apologies.
That's it.
I can do BIM. Not so good at presentations and PDF files. Right? So yeah, the goes hand in hand with the MMC offsite methodology, where you need that fully coordinated, detailed information up front. I mean, the benefits therefore realised once you get on site. There's no rework. There's absolutely minimal waste for on-site activities. All of the Innovari off-site solutions delivered on site. Everything's kind of pre-manufactured in the factory. There's very little waste, very little work to do in terms of cutting and fixing on site. It was all componentized, really, really slick. There are no mistakes or errors during construction, and that actually means that once the M&E installers are on site, it's a really straightforward process for them. They know exactly what to do. They can see the quality of the information, that it's coordinated in the model. That gave us, as main contractor, a large degree of program and cost certainty. I mean, the building itself, the photo there was taken actually well over a week ago now. And some of the rooms are an absolute superb standard, even 3 or 4 weeks before handover. Yeah, I was very impressed. It's a very controlled and slick process in terms of doing the final commissioning with 2 or 3 people in the building, when we carried out a 7-day soak test, just to make sure that all the systems are fully functional, and ironing out some of the commissioning issues. But yeah, it's very, very straightforward, very stress-free, really, in terms of delivery overall. And it says there, defect-free handover. We had a pre-handover inspection from the client and the clerk of works on Monday, actually, this week, and they only managed to find one slight issue, which was a very small scratch from one of the windows, one of the window frames. So other than that, we're anticipating a defect-free handover next week when that happens. Yeah, so that's the projects in brief, and hopefully that's covered everything. It's yeah, really was a demonstrating how BIM works for MMC, how the design team managed to coordinate everything and deliver on site successfully.
Thank you, Matthew. Some really good insights into how turning it into reality. Just a question that I'll throw at you. I know the answer, but I'm sure people will be interested. How did COVID affect productivity on site, and did doing things as we've done, have we actually been able to recover that lost time because of efficiency?
Yeah, I should have mentioned that actually. The programme was tight enough to start with, and then of course back in February and March, obviously COVID struck as well. So yeah, at the time we had literally got the Innovari MMC frame on site. That was about 5 weeks process to get the whole structure up and almost watertight, and that was when the first lockdown happened. It probably took, we had issues with getting labour and some materials to site straight away to complete the snagging on the building, so it sort of slowed down a little bit at that stage. But once it was watertight and we got follow-on trades onto site, we actually saw efficiency improve. And that was largely as a result of all the additional kind of focused, detailed planning that our site management were undertaking, the coordination with our subcontractors in making sure that they had more clearly defined areas of work within the building. And they managed to establish quite a detailed sort of flow through the building from top floor, moving north to south, and then onto the ground floor in the same order. So trades were actually managing to work really efficiently, and feedback that we got from our supply chain was that they were sending maybe 2 gangs to site instead of 3 gangs, and the 2 gangs were doing exactly the same work that they'd anticipate three gangs doing. So really pleased with productivity. The subbies were happy because as long as they could get hold of materials, they were being productive and making decent money on site. So, and our site management felt they were, really in control of the whole process, and could actually provide a very safe, COVID-safe environment for the guys to come and work in. So it's a real success story in a way, despite the adversity that we had. Obviously, had some delays. We've had some additional measures to put in place, but other than that, managed to maintain the production on site.
We're just now dealing with the aftermath of all the site managers with mental health issues. No, it's not that.
Not quite so bad. It wasn't stress-free, put it that way, and exactly. we had a few issues with materials on the day. I mentioned we had a sports block as well to deliver, and that was designed in Bim, but we had a few issues there with having to source alternative materials and going through the sort of compliance checks and everything else that we need to do to make sure that we could implement those changes. And
very good. I mean, one thing that it always amazes me, we for years have been banging on about last planner and better planning on site and not having people working inefficiently. And I think that certainly our site management have recognised that it's more planning, better planning produces better results, and that's certainly been proved in this period. The other thing is the defect-free element. A lot of people, when we first set that target some years ago that we wanted to hand over projects defect-free, everyone says, no, you'll never do it, it's impossible. And my argument was there is, well, would you go and pick up a car and expect the doors not to work and the engine to have a clonk in it or whatever? You wouldn't, and we shouldn't with our buildings. What's interesting is this isn't the only project. We handed over another school a couple of weeks ago that was also deemed defect free, and the majority of the projects that we're handing over now, because of better design, because of better coordination, and therefore cutting out those niggly problems that never really get resolved until right at the end, it generally is helping us achieve a defect-free solution, which is really positive. So I haven't got any direct questions. No doubt they're all being stored up for the open discussion at the end. On that, we're on time. That's good news. Thank you so far. So Matt, you've got to keep going on yours now without spending the next 2 hours telling us about your case study. But over to you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you, Matthew, Mel. So good morning, everybody. I'm Matt Samways from AMIS. Now, whereby Mel and Matthew both work for organisations with a specific place within a project. At AMIS, we're a digital construction consultant. So our agenda is primarily to assist other businesses along their digital journey through training and implementation support. So I've actually taken a slightly different approach with this case study, and this is to highlight the importance of understanding, planning, testing and learning, as these are qualities essential for adopting digital construction, and the realisation that it is indeed a journey rather than immediate implementation, which is something that Mel was talking about also this morning. You know, this is something that takes a bit of time and effort to start to implement. There's a lot to get your head around. There's a lot to understand, a lot to test, and as Mel said, yeah, there is unfortunately some investment to be made, but that investment will come back. There's definitely a return on investment, and depending on where you sit within a construction project may depend on how long that actually takes to get back, but there's definitely a return, whether you're a client, a designer, contractor, or facilities manager. Now, all too often we focus our attention on software, I think, in the belief that we can achieve better outcomes at the press of a button. Software is not the be all and end all. It certainly plays a big part within BIM, but it's not going to solve all your problems. It's never the reality. So digital construction and the adoption of BIM is arguably more about people and the willingness to do things differently to achieve better outcomes. So both the team in Mel's architecture practice, you know, they have taken that decision to change, to do things differently, to do it better, and likewise so have Baxel. You know, they've gone against the curve, they're doing it differently, they have aspirations, as Malcolm was just saying there, they want to be delivering defect-free buildings, and we should all really be having that attitude. So it's about knowing that it's not a tick box exercise, this BIM stuff, and we can't just decide one day that we're going to either require BIM as a client or that we're suddenly going to start delivering BIM on the next project. It takes a lot of planning and a lot of effort to actually get there, a lot of learning. So this particular case study is actually focusing on data delivery, so concentrating on the I in BIM rather than just the modelling side. It's handing over that data and information. But before I present the case study, I do want to try and get a little bit of engagement out of the audience. I'm going to ask some questions. We'll see how this goes. You do have a questions box, which I'd just like you to type sort of the answers in this, and it's going to be a really, really simple answer. I'm just going to ask you to type yes if it applies to you, and we'll see how this goes. I have no idea how it's going to work, but we will find out. So first of all, can you please just type yes in the questions box there if you are here representing a client organisation? We don't need to know what organisation it is, but if you are representing a client organisation, whether that's a local authority or a developer or a house builder or whatever it might be, that you are the client. I'm just going to give you a few seconds to see if anybody here is on the client side. Okay, so nothing coming through, so I shall assume not then. Okay, not to worry, we'll move on to the next one. So it's the same question actually, but this time if you are representing a design organisation, can you type yes in the questions box? Now we've got to get the yeses on this one.
Because there are definitely people there that are representing design organisations, so we're not seeing that on the chat box. We're only seeing, there's 3 responses coming through. Can you see those, Matt? I think you need to switch on the actual responses from the. attendees.
Do you want to know the names or just the numbers for now? So you've got 5 people who've responded to that last question with a yes.
What, to the design organisations? Okay. All right then. So we've got some designers on the call. If there are any clients and I didn't see it, then by all means put something in there for the guys as well. So okay, so we have the design organisations. Now the next question is for those of you that did say yes. Have you been asked to deliver BIM on any of your projects? So by your clients, have they asked for BIM? Pam, are you able to?
Yeah, so that's 3. You've got 3 positives, 3 yes.
Okay, excellent. So we've got some designers that have been asked for BIM. So then lastly, then those of you that were asked for BIM, type yes then if there were any form of data requirements to support that request for BIM. Were you actually being asked for any kind of data or information to be delivered upon handover? So again, just a simple yes. I'm not too concerned about what those requirements were or were not. Just trying to gauge the sort of level of requests that we're getting in the industry. So am I right in thinking there are 3 responses there, Pam?
Yes, you're right. Yeah, 3 responses to that one.
So are they yes responses or
yes,
no?
Yes.
They are
3 yeses, and there was a no, but that was to your previous question.
Right. Okay. So we've got 3 yeses saying that there were data requirements. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe then, I mean, we won't go into it now because we obviously want to get through the case study, but maybe at the end during the open discussion, we could maybe discuss what those were. I'm asking this question just because it's specific to the case study that I'm going to be presenting. So then the last one is actually the same questions, but to contractors. Now, obviously, I know we've got Bimx in the room. Are there any other contractors on the call? Just type yes if you are with a contractor other than Bimx.
You have 2 other contractors in the room.
2 other contractors. Brilliant. Okay. And then for those other 2 contractors, have you been asked to deliver BIM? Yes or no?
You both said yes.
Both said yes. And again, the same question. With those requests for BIM, were there a specific set of data or information requirements with that request for BIM?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that's good. Like I say, not going to get into the guts of what those data requirements were, but I think that's a good sign that okay, so some of the clients out there within Kent are asking for BIM, and they are specifically asking for some data requirements. So hopefully that's a move on from the simple one-liner in the ER saying this project must be BIM level 2, and that being the end of it. So that's good. That's encouraging. Okay, so with the case study, with all that in mind, so with sort of those data requirements out there, I'm hoping I've sort of set the scene for this into some context around benefits gained that I'll talk about in this case study. The case study itself has got little to do with gaining benefits for live projects like the previous 2 were. So with the architectural modelling, there was definitely benefit for the modelling side for the architect, and with the contractors, obviously the smoothness that the project can run and the handover being defect free. This is more so around the benefits to an organisation specifically with the future in mind. So the future benefits, if you like, that can be gained by doing things differently. So it's about understanding, planning, testing and learning, as I said earlier, all in preparation for slicker, leaner and data-driven strategy. So on this case study here, I'm assuming you can see my screen.
Yeah.
So it's a proof of concept. So we were taken on board to help an organisation prove that this all works from start to finish. So there was engagement, or there was input from architecture, which actually we did the modelling for the architecture. There was an MEP engineer engaged, the contractor, a couple of subcontractors and the FM team all together to test all of these processes to see if they work. So there was a bit of modelling, There was a COBE delivery requirement, and it was going into the FM team. So the FM guys were very much involved testing the back end, seeing getting this data to work. So in terms of what we did, like I said, it's a proof of concept project. It was delivered to test the processes and procedures outlined in industry BIM standards. Now, it began when the PAS 1192 documents were still live and current. They're not anymore, whether you know or not. ISO 19650 has now superseded the majority of the 1192 suite now. So they're now redundant. So there was a bit of a crossover, but essentially, you know, the goals and the outcomes of the BIM process, whether it's PAS 1192 or ISO 19650, is largely the same goals that we're trying to achieve. During the project, we needed to coordinate all of the different disciplines of models. So like I said, we did the architectural modelling. The structural modelling was done by we actually got a timber manufacturer to do the structural modelling. So it's a timber frame house. This was a house type. So they did all of the timber modelling with all the stud work and the panelling. The MEP organisation, Calford Seedon, were doing the MEP modelling. So they modelled all of that. We also got the kitchen supplier on board who modelled the kitchen for us. So we were testing this in the way that we had different disciplines coming together, sharing models, and they were actually sharing them from different softwares as well. The timber manufacturer was using an AutoCAD product. Architecture and MEP were both using Revit. The kitchen supplier, I'm not entirely sure what their authoring software was, but they were just sharing through the IFC. But then, having done a little bit of digging, they do have a library on the MBS BIM library and on BIM objects. So they do have Revit components. So I'm guessing they did it in Revit, but they only shared the IFC with us to make sure we were being able to share the data with the IFC format. And then the data input was all aligned with the COBE standard. So it wasn't just off the cuff, we need to deliver COBE because that's what the UK government has said that they want on central projects. There was a purpose behind it, and that purpose was that the FM software that they were using is Maximo, and Maximo is set up to accept COBE data. So this COBE structure that's being handed over was the right structure for the FM systems. Now, that's not always going to be the case, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on. The other thing we needed the COBE data to align with was the common data environment, which was Viewpoint for projects. So when you load your IFC files into Viewpoint, it can access that COBE information from the IFC so that you can select your objects within the CDE viewer, and you can view all of that COBE data in there as well. Now, there are nuances here between how you see that data, where Viewpoint is looking within the IFC file for the COBE data and where Maximo is looking for that COBE data. So this is the point of this case study, is actually it takes a lot of testing to make sure that you're going to get this right. The goal, don't think that you can just go through a project testing this, doing it one way, and then get to the end and it's all going to be fantastic, because it really won't. Test little bits, make sure that you're putting the data in the right place at the right time so that everything can read it where it needs to. And if you test those little parts, then you can carry on with the rest of the project knowing that it's going to be okay. So we needed this data visible in the right structure, like I say, through the IFC for the Maximo and Viewpoint for projects, but also to make sure that it came through in the XLS format, which is, if you can see on the right hand side of the case study there, that's just a screenshot of this COBE data set. This is what people tend to visualize when they hear of COBE. But there is a data checking tool, a free tool online, which you can run through, which you need to run through, because COBE is a standard, and you need to test that the right sort of data is in the right place to make sure it's compliant with that standard. And you can do that with these free tools. So we needed that XLS to be able to run through the checking tool. And all of this was done basically in preparation for implementation on live projects. So like I said, it's a proof of concept. So it wasn't a live project, but it was setting up this organization for future live projects, which are going to start imminently. In terms of how can others adopt this practice, well, it is all about that researching and understanding. So research, understand and test your deliverables before you actually go ahead and do the whole project. if you are a client organisation and asking for COBie, make sure you have a purpose for it. I mean, do you really need COBie? And this is something that we've come across far too often over the years. It's something that we're trying to hopefully break the mold a little bit. And whatever data you're asking for, you just need to have a purpose for it. Is it right for you? We've got some clients that we're working with at the moment that, you know, that they've heard of the COBie stuff, but when you look at the systems that they're using at the moment, COBie's a complete waste of time. They need a different data structure to feed their systems, and that's what developing your requirements is all about. So it's not always going to be COBie. If you're a designer or a contractor appointed to deliver COBie, research it and test the delivery strategy. Like I say, it's not going to be a smooth, here you go, here's a COBie file. It takes that testing. Structured data requires good planning, especially when different software is being used. Know that COBie also is a US standard. It's not a British standard. There is a BS 1192 Part 4, which is the UK version of it, but COBie was developed in the US for a specific purpose. And the UK has just tried to sort of squeeze it into something that will work for us, which maybe works, maybe doesn't so much. But go by the US standard. It's called the National BIM Standard version 3. It is free, but it does require some technical knowledge. My advice, if you're being asked to deliver COBie, is read that, go through that, and then you've got the right sort of guidance there within that document. But like I say, you do need a bit of that technical knowledge for it. I'll go through the sort of benefits and values later. This image here on the left-hand side, I was sort of playing around with this yesterday to try and get something that sort of visualized what we were doing from a geometric point of view. So you can see that I've hidden like various different bits. So we've got the substructure, which was done in the architectural model. You can see all the stud work and the roof trusses in there from the timber manufacturer with the OSB boards or whatever boards they are on the outside there. You can see the kitchen in here as well and the stairs, and you can see the MEP. You've got your water tank over there. There's an NVHR unit somewhere in a cupboard over on the left-hand side there as well. So all of these disciplines were brought together to get the coordinated 3D geometry, but they were also loaded with the COBie data. So then this last box here, where it starts with our client, this is just a bit more information about the project. So the client is a multidisciplinary organisation with both construction and facility management operations. They're a huge organisation. They do all sorts of things within the built environment. And they're looking at developing a number of standard house types because they do a lot of housing developments and that they have standardised house types. They want to develop these as BIM house types with the data so that they can be used, so the projects can be delivered using these BIM models with all the embedded COBie data, which then feeds directly into their FM software, Maximo, because they are maintaining these assets for X number of years afterwards. So it's an end-to-end solution for them. So they've put the proper thought into what they want to achieve, and this is really important from a client organisation or a development organisation. And they've determined that COBie is a data exchange format that works with their systems, and therefore it is a deliverable which has been tested and proven to work. So that's what this concept project was all about. It was testing it and proving that it all works. It's not a tick box exercise. They're looking at achieving maximum value throughout the building life cycle. And with different project stakeholders using different systems, we needed to ensure we could output the right information in the right structure from each system in order to merge it all into a single data set. This took a lot of testing. It is not something that could be successfully achieved on a live project, not without significant delays and hurdles at least. So BIM is about delivering the reliable information, and 3D models can be used as a vehicle to deliver that information, at least during design. And however, other approaches may be better suited to data capture. We're not necessarily going to be loading construction information from a COBie structure into BIM models. That may not be the best way to do it. There are other ways of capturing this data. So it's about planning, testing and learning, as I've said a couple of times. Yeah, so it's important to note sort of on this point that although COBie is a verified, tried and tested data schema, and it has been included within the UK BIM framework deliverables if specified, such as government projects. Like I said earlier, it's not necessarily fit for everybody right here, right now, for all organisations. I've mentioned before, we've seen a lot of requirements asking for COBie with no purpose for it, no systems to accept the data. There's almost certainly a premium to be paid for delivering this and for no added value whatsoever. There's simply a lack of understanding that people assume that they need COBie when actually they don't. Some more advice really, if you want to embark on your digital roadmap, which you most certainly should if you haven't already, start small and evolve. Right now, clients have systems. Many of them will operate with a data import export function compatible with CSV files or databases. Let's look at these structures and use this to start to understand digital information delivery and the use of models and forms as a means to exchange this data. This way, we're dealing with information people are already familiar with, and then we can look at what improvements can be made later. So it is a journey, as we've said before. It's not something that you're going to instantly become masters of. And that is the point around the understanding what you need, planning how you're going to get it, testing what works before you implement it on a live project, and then learn how to continually improve it. This way we can all upgrade our very, very outdated industry. And I was going to sort of add in a few things there on that note with the outdated industry thing. Is anybody in the room? You don't have to answer the questions, but if you still, does anybody still use a camera with film, play cassette tapes or video cassettes? What about a phone with a turn dial, or use a typewriter to write a letter? All of these things were in widespread use at the same time as 2D drafting and paper-based information management in construction. All of these things are virtually extinct and have now digitized. Why isn't construction? So it's just a little bit to sort of finish off there. So there we have it, the sort of 3 case studies that we've delivered. Hope you enjoyed hearing about them. I think we've now got time for open discussion, so I'll hand back to Malcolm, unless there's any questions specifically about that one, Malcolm.
I haven't seen any, Pam. I'm sure you'll feed us if there are. But thank you for that, Matt. I'm particularly interested around how the FM sector links in with BIM. Do you feel that the FM sector has engaged fully, or is it still hit and miss?
Oh, very much hit and miss. Yeah, I think a lot of it depends on the size of the organisation. These guys are big. They've got an FM department. They're on a journey together as an organisation as a whole. From an industry point of view, yeah, very much hit and miss, I think, with the FM guys.
It's an interesting. Some of the evidence that I can sort of add to that is that you talk to clients about what they would like, or what you give them the vision of having a fully maintained building and not having to worry about it reducing waste and efficiencies of the building in operation, and they all go, yeah, that's exactly what we want. Isn't that what we pay our FM providers for? But actually they don't get that. They very rarely get and it's that, I think that's going to be the big game changer when we as an industry start to deliver what our clients need, not what they think they're getting, because that's the big issue at the moment. It does appear that we're too good at just asking the client what they want, and most of them don't really know. So asking them what they want at the beginning of a project, saying, how do you want the data in order for your FM suppliers to be more efficient and deliver a better service? They haven't got a clue.
No.
And that I think actually is incumbent on us in the industry to be much more professional in working out exactly what it is that will give people a building that is run and maintained efficiently, and then give it to them. Don't ask them, just do it, and then that's what provides better service, better quality. And at the end of the day, we all know, those of us that are engaging in BIM and in technology, the efficiencies that are gained by that actually pay for any extra investment that it takes to get to that point. And you're going back to your comment about phones and 2D and all the other stuff. I mean, it's a bit like having Google Maps and directions. I mean, you haven't got, if you've got an atlas and you've got an out-of-date atlas and it's in your glove compartment, or you've still left it at home, I mean, it's useless. And yet that's what we're doing in the industry. We're creating design information and trying to give that to people on site and then passing that on to FM. That is as if it's an old A to Z, and it's not. That's gone, and we've got to wake up to the digital world and develop something that actually clients need and give them that. Stop asking them what they want. But no, interesting. Thank you. Well, we're looking good. We've got another 20 or so minutes to open up discussion. I'm going to be at risk of opening it up so that people are unmuted. We've got quite a few people online. We'll see how that works. But if it becomes untenable, then we'll switch people off, and you'll have to use the chat box. But I'm going to probably unfairly jump on a few people if I don't get too many questions. But has anyone got any burning questions, any particular comments they want to make about the case studies they've heard today, and how we should perhaps move this forward as a group?
Malcolm, I've got a question for Matt, just to get the ball rolling, really. Well, two questions. Firstly, Matt, does COBE deliver any benefits during the design and construction stages, or all the benefits for FM? And if there are, what are they? And second question, which I know the answer to, but I did struggle with it for a little while, but can you explain exactly what schema is?
Oh, God.
A little bit of time to work out what it was.
Right, hold on, I'm just going to go on Google. So does COBE deliver benefits during design and construction? Yes, it can do if implemented properly. It's essentially, I think, what a lot of people don't understand about COBE is the majority of it is information that is produced anyway on projects, albeit in an ad hoc and unstructured way. So when you start thinking about things like door schedules, window schedules, or any sort of equipment schedule, which is a maintainable asset at the end of the day, during design, we are generating those schedules. Quite often they're either sort of spat out of the BIM software. They can be automatically generated. If we're not using BIM software, then they're done in a separate manner, whether it's in Excel or in AutoCAD or whatever it might be. And different organizations will sort of name different fields in their schedules in a different way. Essentially, COBE is just a bunch of schedules very much similar to that. So you have a bunch of doors in your project. They are all named uniquely. We tend to have a door number, which architects will put on their drawings. And you'll have various information about those doors, whether it's an ironmongery set or you've got your dimensional data, your height, width, length, and all the rest of it. And all of that is part of the COBE data. So you have certain information about the types of doors, and then you have certain information about each individual component of those doors. And that is COBE information. So if we're doing it all using the COBE structure, then there's the benefit there that everybody's doing it in a standardized way. And then COBE can be used as a lean handover technique whereby you're producing that data as you go through the project. So all of the design COBE information is put in. Most people are doing it anyway, just not in the COBE structure. And then when you go into construction, those COBE data sheets can then be completed with the installation information. So your things like your installation date, the manufacturer, the warranty, supplier information, and all of the rest of it. So all the information that we produce in a COBE database is all the same information that we produce as handover documentation anyway. The only difference is it's in a structured format. So I hope that kind of answers that question as to whether it delivers benefit. The benefit to be got, I suppose, at its highest level, it's a streamlined information flow. So that information is being populated in a structure as the project progresses. It's only being produced once, captured once, and then reused multiple times within the COBie data set. So that would be the benefits of COBie. It's obviously going to take practice and testing and thought, like I said in the case study. In terms of schema, it's one of those words. My view on the word schema, I suppose, is more like a data structure. So you have an IFC schema. If you were to go into the HTML data sort of file format of that IFC schema, you'll have the parental hierarchy of where data lives. So you'll have the parent and all the different children. So it may be a type. You'd have sort of IFC building element proxy, IFC window, IFC door, and then below that you would get the sort of the parent-child relationships. And it's those relationships of the data that is the schema. I think with the COBie schema, you're looking at its highest level, you have your space, your floor, component type, job, spares, whatever it might be, attributes, as being your parents, and then the children underneath there with the component information. So I think the schema is more the structure of the data, specifically based around the language of the data, I would imagine.
Okay, brilliant.
Does that help?
Any other questions anyone's got at the moment? Yeah, if people want to be unmuted to talk, you can just raise your hand and Pam will then unmute you. Particularly looking at Rui and Barry and your thoughts as from a leadership group's point of view. While they're thinking about what they're going to say, Melissa, the efficiency you talked about in your case study about the efficiency of designing in 3D, and that was then being transferred to better information, and how the site manager himself was singing its praises. Do you think as a design practice that you are becoming more efficient and your fees are working harder for you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Obviously, it wasn't initially because of that investment of time resource into the process. But it is doing that. But the way we've ensured that is to focus on that. So we haven't focused on all the whizzy gadgets. It was always, what can this do to make our practice more efficient? So that was our whole approach, and then the other things can add in, and I think, well, I know it has worked well. So even on the smallest of projects, for instance, a £60,000 extension and kitchen dining room alteration, a domestic project, I used that, or I used Bim software on that, and the survey information that you usually come up with in heights of windows, window heads, and things like that, you're kind of thinking, oh well, I need this information for producing an elevation, but you're actually using that same information, but you're producing a model from which you then generate the elevation. So there is that kind of mental step, which is different. But what tends to happen in the process of trying to get something from 3D down to 2D, which we always used to do, plans, elevations, and sections, is that you run the risk of there being mistakes and assumptions are being made all the time. With the 3D model, you can't quite do that, because you suddenly realize, oh, there's an interface between this window head and the floor, and it isn't like that. So there's all that sort of things that happen when you are modeling as opposed to working in 2D, because it's almost like poetic license in 2D work, where things are left. We'll sort that on site. I don't really know what's happening there. We'll leave that. And of course, that is a risk. It's a risk to us because, you know, it might result in a costly error where we end up in court, you know, taking an extreme view. So it kind of gives us surety. And in fact, many insurers, PI insurers, are all in favour of BIM because they're aware that this is all about reducing risk and increasing efficiency. So, you know, that's where we are.
So no going back for you guys then? You wouldn't
Sorry?
go back with, no going back for you guys?
No, I mean, it's the same thing has happened as what happened 25, 30 years ago when we went from drawing board to CAD. It was an upheaval. But the mindset was very similar between as an architect, the mindset was very similar between working on the drawing board with pencil and pen to working on the electronic drawing board. This is, you know, much more of an impact, but it is to our advantage. It's not an additional service. It is not, you know, I've been asked by another contractor, you know, can you produce all this information, but can you do a BIM model as well? And, you know, that's crazy because it is about producing a BIM model, full stop, from which you then generate all the 2D information, both rapidly and very structured.
That is a bit like getting Google Maps and getting your directions and then printing them off.
Yes.
Put them on your car seat next to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've started to move away from that. Yeah, thank you for that. One of the things that you've heard me say before, and we've discussed as a group, is the efficiencies that come out of a 3D design and better information actually are very much realized in the construction process. And then subsequently, if you get that right, into the facilities management process. And that's one of the reasons why, as a design and build contractor, we've taken this really seriously, because the benefits of getting it right are demonstrated by more efficient and less waste on site, and that reduced cost. And actually, subcontractor supply chain are reducing their prices, not at the expense of profitability. If anything, they can increase their profitability, but they're actually reducing the base cost. And that's where I think the massive change is beginning to happen. I was asked by a journalist yesterday why we were being particularly successful over recent years, and it is fundamentally because we are doing it differently to the original way, the traditional way, getting the designs right, coordinating, collaborating, working with our supply chain to realise those benefits, and actually delivering something that even I, you know, with my enthusiasm and passion for wanting the industry to improve, thought that might never happen in my working life, but it is, and it's happening in places. What these case studies are designed to do is hopefully to give people a little bit of evidence, a little bit of support when you're going back to your own organisations and saying, look, have a look at this. You know, I'm hearing these presentations, I'm hearing some really good stuff. I think we need to be upping our game. Just, is there any particular questions that anyone wants to raise? I'm not seeing anything. Stuart has raised his hand. Stuart Birdwell, do you want to come in and?
Yeah, morning, Malcolm. Yeah, thanks. It was just really more for Matt, really, just on the Kobe information. Obviously, we've been trying to implement this on a couple of schools projects as required for the DFE, yep. And obviously on the structural side, technically, I suppose there's not really anything too much on the structural side to include, because obviously it's maintainable assets. However, obviously we have been including the structural frame, but there is quite a range of opinions on some of the fields, and obviously information out there as to how to apply that. I didn't know if there was any sort of recommendations on sort of documents to follow. As I say, we're using the information from the Autodesk BIM interoperability sites and stuff, which is quite good. But didn't know if you had any other advice out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's, like I say, there's a lot that you need to test to get it right. If you're all using the Autodesk suite, great. Obviously, the BIM interoperability tools add-in will help you to generate the COBie outputs. So I mean, it is all dependent. I guess the DFE probably want the IFC handover, I would imagine. I don't know what's in their specific requirements. In terms of what's included and what's not, yes, it is definitely maintainable assets only. If you go to the NBIMS version 3 specification that I mentioned, the US standard for COBie, there is actually a list of everything that is not required as part of the COBie data set. And you'll probably be quite surprised as to some of the things that are not required. To what level of understanding the DFE actually have on that, I don't know. Without seeing their specific data requirements, it's difficult to sort of advise specifically. But I would certainly say go to the NBIMS document and have a read through that to identify what is included and what's not. I mean, where are you from, Stuart?
Croftons. Crofton. Yeah, and obviously Barry, we've been working with Barry on that. But say there's working with other members of the design team, there are areas within COBie that aren't particularly listed as to what it should be, and so I think there's obviously you can get quite a range of different opinions, and let's say the DFE are not particularly up on it. I don't expect the guys implementing it, and so yeah, it's just if anyone's had any other experience of doing it for the DFE, really.
Well, we have Matt, Barry, Stuart, Barry's background. I was looking at, I was saying it, but yes, we are, and we've also offered to support DFE, the framework on BIM progression, because when we started to go to some of the as you know, we're on the framework, and when we were going to some of the sessions, it was very apparent that they didn't know what they were talking about. It was quite scary. I think it's getting better, but I think the next iteration of the framework will have BIM right at its forefront. I think they're recognizing that where they're comparing comparisons, you've got to bear in mind there's quite a lot of contractors, design and build contractors across the whole framework, across the whole country. And what they're recognizing by looking at KPIs and performance, that those that are doing BIM and taking it seriously are tending to have better sets of KPIs and performing better, which is a positive. Well, it's a positive for us BIM exponents anyway. And we think that the new iteration of the framework will have that at its core. But Matthew Barker, is there anything you'd add about the requirements of the DFE framework? We should have Lindsay on the call, really, shouldn't we?
No, I mean, on the framework, they do have BIM at its within their requirements. From experience, and we're only on the sort of the lower value band, it does tend to be dropped because it wasn't mandated within their current framework arrangement. And I think because of the way they're procured, and perhaps as you alluded to, a bit of a lack of understanding from the client side with some of the advisors and project managers that are running the lower value projects, it hasn't been something that they've been really looking at. So we've just exploited ourselves on the projects that we've been involved in. But I'd just like to add as well, while we've got a couple of minutes, just to some of the comments that Mel made earlier. It's actually, when you're talking about doing something within a 3D model environment from a contractor's perspective, it's very clear that actually architects and designers generally, they're having to model something means that actually we can build it. Whereas in the past, there have been the odd occasion when people have actually drawn something in 2D that can't be constructed. So, you know, we have this mantra within our BIM execution plans and our launch meetings with our teams that if you can't model it, we can't build it. So, absolutely, it's completely agree with what you said, Mel. It's the way forward, really, and there won't be any contractors out there that won't support those on that journey.
Yeah, I think that's one of the costs, if you like, and I mentioned that. You know, there is a cost associated with working in a 3D environment and designing in a 3D environment with accuracy, because you do have to spend time inserting, for instance, the correct beam size, including its weight, because we know all steel sections actually vary from their nominal sizes. And you know, that's just an example, but it's about getting things right and getting it right first time for the purpose of construction. So why shouldn't we be doing that? It was something that was the skill of the architect at a certain time, but you know, this makes it easier for us. And it eliminates the risk.
Yeah.
Good. I'm conscious of the time. We're just coming to the end of the time on this one. I'm going to suggest we, as a leadership group, will get together fairly quickly and get a survey monkey out to get feedback as to how people feel the session's been, and how, with some ideas that we will have as no doubt as a leadership group on how we move this forward. Our thought process previously was that, as I mentioned in the introduction, that we would look to do these on a regular basis, perhaps doing one or two or even more presentations, giving people the opportunity to present their case studies, as Matthew, Matt and Melissa have done very ably this morning. It's been a good way of sharing not only the evidence but also raising questions and thoughts and ideas on how to move this forward. So it's thank you for everyone's attendance this morning, and for those presenting. I trust you will all have a busy week and a healthy one, and despite all the pressures that we're under, that we do get some sort of Christmas and that you can enjoy that. But as a final note, do keep the faith. I am absolutely sure that the digitisation of what we're delivering and the changing business model that's evolving by the day almost is going to be an exciting one for the industry and the whole built environment. And yeah, we'll watch this space, and we're here to support and help across Kent, both clients, contractors, consultants on this journey. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Pam at UK BIM Alliance, for setting this up for us today, and we look forward to future sessions. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.